antebellum attack on the American idea is that it was defeated in war before it could attain much influence. That is, until one of its core tenets was picked up by modern leftists more than a century later. The best thing one can say about the original progressives is that many within the movement sought specific policies and goals that are fully consistent with core American principles, that would almost certainly have won the approval of the founders and their heirs, and that could have been enacted on the basis of the original tenets of American political thought. It suffices to mention strengthening education at all levels, supporting morality in the family, bolstering the work ethic, immigration and civil service reform, trust busting to enable fair competition, calls to national service, and the creation of the national park system. The tragedy of progressivism is that it mistakenly and unnecessarily upended the firmest basis for republicanism in an attempt to further many essentially republican ends. Many harmful consequences followed progressivism's triumph. Federalism and the separation of powers were undermined. The scope and size of government grew exponentially. The executive branch conceived the embryo of a massive fourth branch now known as the administrative state. But progressivism's most baleful consequence has been theoretical. Progressivism subjected the entire political and moral epistemology sketched above, the only sound and logically consistent basis for Republican government, to sustained attack and ridicule. That attack was so effective that it is now impossible for any educated person to say, on the basis of traditional religious faith or a shared understanding of permanent human nature, that anything human can be good or bad. Progressivism instead replaces human nature with history and science. History, in this understanding, is a process, which may or may not have a goal or end, of continual improvement in human affairs, with allowances for occasional backsliding around the margins. The thought and practice, especially the morality, of the present is always superior to that of the past, in part because of accumulated knowledge. We know more, therefore we know better. Progressivism takes its name from this alleged insight. Progressivism further holds that present knowledge is superior to the thought of the past not only in quantity, but in quality. Contemporary thought is sounder and more rigorous, in a word, truer, because it rests on empirical science and its methodology, in contrast to the inherent imprecision of philosophy, which, as a consequence of that imprecision, never rises above the level of opinion. Progressivism insists that it can apply the methodology of the natural sciences to the human things and come to conclusions superior to those of philosophy and equal in precision to those of natural science. Few today would argue that this goal has been achieved, yet the project has entirely succeeded in disqualifying as knowledge any thought or conclusion that does not ostensibly rest on the scientific method. This belief that science is the highest and perhaps the only form of knowledge further undermined any basis for distinguishing right from wrong. Darwinism appears to shatter the old understanding of man as a being distinguishable in kind, not merely by degree from the other animals. Advances in physics suggest that everything in the universe, including man, is just a collection of particles, leaving humanity with no intrinsic specialness or dignity. Modern neuroscience claims that free will, or human choice, is an illusion. Original progressivism long ago left the field without having resolved any of these difficulties. Still, since human beings by nature want to proclaim some things good and others bad, a new claim to justice had to be asserted, and so was by post-1960s leftism, about which it is hard to find anything good to say. At best, one can acknowledge that certain genuine injustices targeted by that movement did indeed demand correction. Yet all of these, above all the legacies of slavery and Jim Crow, were already being addressed through constitutional means. That is, until post-1960s leftism took over, with solutions incoherent in theory and destructive in practice. First, genuine equality as posited by justice as fairness is not equality as understood from the American founding until the 1960s, but is instead a leveling equality. Perhaps less obviously, justice as fairness does great violence to the concept of the common good. The common good as traditionally understood, policies that benefit the whole citizenry enacted by lawful majorities, can, under this new understanding, no longer be a lodestar for politics because the majority, at least unless and until it is replaced by a new, more deserving